and I promise you, we will not be slowing down anytime soon. We'll be getting out that Season 1 look back video next, and then we'll be finally jumping into Arrow Season 3.
Well, that comment certainly aged well, didn't it?
When you watch video essays on YouTube, specifically the ones in the superhero sphere, you often hear people talk about character arcs and strong plots. It is these elements that I've tried my hardest to study, hone, and perfect in my own writing. And I'll fully admit, sometimes I'm still not the greatest at it. But one thing I don't hear enough people talk about in video essays is the theme of the story. Theme is a fundamental story value that often goes overlooked because it requires a much deeper look than just saying something like this.
Oliver, go after him! You saw the direction he was running! You had to have!
While this is a valid critique, it's not one that requires much thought. Anyone can see that this is bad writing. Trying to find a story's theme requires a few additional levels of thought, and requires you to look deeper than just saying something like this.
Wait, I thought you two were supposed to be friends. Don't you think you ought to give him the benefit of the doubt?
He's saying this, but he did not give the benefit of the doubt to Moira! So what exactly is the theme of Arrow's first season, and why did I feel it necessary to make an entire separate video talking about it? Well, it's because the theme of Arrow's first season is change. From the very first episode, it's made very obvious to Moira that the Oliver she lost might not be the one they found. The purpose of the flashbacks is to show how Oliver became the man he is in the present day, to show how he changed. And it's not just Oliver either. Everyone and everything in Starling City has changed, a point highlighted by Tommy Merlin.
This city's gone to crap. Your dad sold his factory just in time.
It's not just Oliver that's experienced that change. Everything about Starling has changed. The people in Oliver's life have changed. Change affects every aspect of Arrow's first season, even the most minor one-off characters. The best episodes in the season, Damaged, Legacies, Trust But Verify, The Odyssey, Salvation, and the season finale, Sacrifice, are all influenced by the theme of the season. But I did not come to this realization myself. I was instead awakened to this epiphany by G.I.G.O., who explored the concept beautifully during his video, This Superhero Show Changed My Life. I think it's one of the best videos on YouTube about Arrow, right next to this edit of Oliver Queen to the song Human by Christina Perri. I'll leave a link to both in the description. So with a new understanding of Arrow's theme, I went back and re-examined Arrow's first season, viewing it through the lens of this theme of change. And going into it with that knowledge made me appreciate the season on a whole new level. Viewing the season through a lens of change as opposed to just trying to analyze it gave me the much needed perspective I was missing when I watched the season for AA. And knowing the season is about the ways people can change suddenly makes dozens of writing decisions make a lot more sense. Suddenly, Oliver doesn't gravitate back towards Laurel at the end of Salvation because he's lonely. Viewing it through a lens of change unlocks the realization that Oliver was resisting the changes he underwent while on Leon Yu, clinging to the comforting and familiar instead of trying something new. Suddenly, Oliver doesn't want to throw the Queen family Christmas party for no reason. Viewing it through a lens of change unlocks the realization that Oliver was trying to revert everyone else's changes so they'd stop being so distant and go back to the way he remembered them. And I could go on, but I think you get it. Now, I'm going to give a brief overview of Season 1, as well as expand on a lot of my new thoughts on certain aspects of the season. And yes, I will be bringing up some very similar arguments to the one talked about by Gio in his video, which again will be linked in the description. If you like Arrow at all, and you haven't watched that video, go do it. After spending 5 years on Leon Yu until that gets retconned, Oliver went from a billionaire playboy who didn't really care about anything to someone acutely aware of his family's wrongdoings and fiercely determined to make them right. Oliver spent 5 years in hell undergoing that change. When he returns to Starling City, however, he needed to keep up appearances and pretend to be someone he's not sure he is anymore. But Oliver doesn't at first consider that everyone who he used to know has changed too. His mother's grief over the death of her husband and son left her vulnerable to Malcolm Merlyn, who recruited her into his cabal to plan the undertaking. His sister hides from her grief by engaging in reckless and destructive behaviors like shoplifting, underage drinking, and drug abuse. His ex-girlfriend's entire family fell apart because their daughter Sarah supposedly died along with him on the gambit. Even the villains of the week are susceptible to the theme of change, and we see it happen in real time. Adam Hunt's life gets upended when Oliver comes knocking at his door, turning him from a wealthy dirtbag to a vengeful, down-on-his-luck schmuck trying to scam people out of cash because he can barely afford an apartment. Martin Summers went from a man confident and capable enough to watch a man have his throat slit in front of him to a sniveling mess that can't even form a coherent sentence once Oliver paid him a visit. Deadshot went from a typical freak of the week into being a major antagonist for the series' most prolific side character, and actually succeeded at shaking up the season's formula at the time the episode aired. And those are just the first 3 episodes. But by far, the episodes that benefit the most from this exploration of change are the Huntress duology, Muse of Fire, and Vendetta. The episodes surrounding Helena Bertinelli are a pair of episodes that I fundamentally misunderstood during my viewing of Arrow Season 1. I went into them with an open mind, certainly, and I do like the character of Helena Bertinelli now because of it. However, I didn't really understand the point of these episodes. The point of introducing the Huntress is to confront Oliver with someone just as broken as he is, someone that knows what it's like to hate and wants to make things right, someone who, just like him, has already changed. Oliver tries to steer her on the right path, but Helena is too committed to her vengeance to want to take an approach that offers any possibility for mercy. She doesn't want to make things better for everyone around her, she just wants to hurt the people that hurt her. She's made her decision, and it's hopeless for Oliver to try to steer her in the right direction. Longing for a deep connection with someone, anyone, Oliver ignores the red flags and continues mentoring Helena, pushing her further into the Huntress persona. Their dynamic is actually pretty well done. I still think my points about the episodes having the Eric Wallace problem and happening way too fast are valid, but my criticism of Oliver in these episodes is completely wrong. This episode still sucks ass, though. And speaking of ignoring red flags, let's talk about Moira Queen. There's an argument that can be made about her being the best written character across the first 2 seasons. She becomes complacent in the undertaking to protect the family that she has left. Thea. Moira's fear of Thea and later Walter and Oliver getting hurt is what dictates her actions through several future episodes. Year's End, betrayal, salvation. It's only once her family is put in harm's way by someone trying to stop Malcolm in darkness on the edge of town when she pivots towards doing the right thing. The first thought in Moira's head is always protecting her family, and that's exemplified incredibly by how her death is handled in Season 2. Her motivations don't change, but her methodology does. I wanted to keep the discussion mostly about Season 1, but sometimes I can't help myself but bring up future examples, especially when they support the evidence as well as Moira's death does. And as for Oliver himself, I'm just gonna hammer this point home one final time that Oliver's crusade in Season 1 was never built on a lie. His crusade in Season 1 was simply his belief that only he knew how to save his city. This is the lie that Oliver believes that's preventing him from developing. We see this time and time again as Oliver isolates himself from his family and friends, and through how his partnership with Dig begins. He only lets Dig in on his secret because he sees a piece of himself in John.
No, I want you to join me. Special Forces out of Kandahar. It's perfect. You're a fellow soldier.
Oliver, you're not a soldier.
Their partnership begins very cold and objective, only becoming softer over time as Dig begins to break down Oliver's walls.
Diggle, I'm not looking for anybody to save me.
Maybe not. But you need someone just the same.
Oliver's arc throughout the season is to learn to let other people in. First it's Dig, then eventually Felicity. And it's not just while he's suited up either, but also in his personal life. He never tells anyone his secret identity, but he does start to get closer with his mother, Tommy, Laurel, Thea, and everyone else again. It's these connections that Oliver embraces that allow him to realize he's not in it alone anymore. He's no longer fending for himself on Lian-Yu. And it's once Oliver accepts that and brings Dig with him to Merlin Global that he's able to defeat Merlin. And what I love most is that the series never tells you any of this and leaves it up to interpretation. This is why Sacrifice is my favorite finale in the show, and why I gave it a 5 in characterization. And that's a good enough segue into the score updates. Some of these will not have very in-depth reasons why I'm changing them, but some of them absolutely will. Starting with the pilot, knowing what I know now about Oliver's arc, Moira's arc, etc., I feel comfortable moving characterization up to a 5. Also, Oliver would have needed to kill all 3 of these guys in order to protect his identity, but I only counted 2 on account of the scene's quick pacing and poor framing. So please allow me to rectify that error. For Honor Thy Father, characterization will be improved to a 5 as well, and plot will jump up to a 4. However, importance will drop to a 3. I still agree with everything I said, I just don't think that it justifies a 4 in importance. Lone Gunman will receive an additional point in plot, and Lawton is staying in room 52 at his hotel. Fuck me. An Innocent Man gains a point in characterization and visuals. There's also a kill in this episode that I missed. Damaged definitely gets a 5 in characterization, and I should have given it that score at the same time that I improved the score of Legacies way back when. I was trying to be more, for lack of a better word, fair with my scores back then, which is why not a lot of episodes got 5 in categories that weren't importance. The benefit of hindsight makes this moment in Oliver's interrogation scene so much better.
Have you killed anyone?
Yes, when I asked your daughter Sarah to come on my father's yacht with me, I killed your daughter.
He says that he killed Sarah because that's what Lance wants to hear, but if you look at this scene with the added context from Season 2, you can see that Oliver still blames himself for Shadow's death even in the present day. Oliver is not lying when he says he killed someone here, or at least that he believes he did. He's just redirecting his answer because he knew it would get Lance off his back. You can even argue that's the entire reason it takes so long for him to answer the question, and why the polygraph doesn't see a slight flutter in that answer. That flip kick that Yao Fei does on Wintergreen in this episode is the same move that Oliver does to this guy that comes to attack him at his home. I always like finding little details like that. Also, the number on Oliver's prisoner outfit is the hex color for green. That's a fun detail, but I cannot unsee that now. Legacies will get its entertainment buffed up to a 5 since it was easily the best episode of the first half of the season. Muse of Fire and Vendetta are the biggest episodes I've changed my mind on, and I will be improving the characterization score of each to a 4. And for Muse of Fire specifically, I'll bump up the visuals and entertainment to a 3. I'm going to give them points for the callback stuff, the visual connections between Oliver and Helena, like his list versus her corkboard, as well as the attention to detail with Helena's cross necklace. I kind of want to give it an extra point in importance, but I don't really feel like many people talk about the Huntress, and really the only major development that happens plot-wise is the reveal that Malcolm is Tommy's dad. It's a brief footnote in Oliver's character development, and the way Oliver has a blind spot for his mother essentially does what this episode was going for with him, only better. The real problem with the Huntress duology isn't necessarily that Oliver is acting out of character, it's that everything between Oliver and Helena happens too quickly. If this were happening over a few episodes, hell, if this were a minor arc over the season's back half, I don't think I'd have the issues with it that I did. If this were the culmination of this subplot as opposed to being the beginning and culmination, it would get a 5 in characterization. I see where Gio was coming from with that small part of his video, but because of how fast they have to introduce Helena and move through the Oliver-Helena relationship, I can't give this episode that extra point. What I'm trying to say is, it has the Eric Wallace problem. It wasn't given enough time to do what the writers wanted it to do. But would you look at that? I gave the episode extra points. Let nobody say I'm not being fair. Now on to Vendetta. This shot of Oliver screaming as Helena gets shot is actually reused in The Huntress Returns when Helena shoots McKenna. You can tell because his quiver is on the other side of his back from the previous shot, and the splotch of blue that's supposed to be from the mist from the background. Though I will admit, they did mask it pretty well by shifting the colors slightly. And also, I couldn't tell at first because my dumbass put text over it. And yeah, I'm never doing that again. That was stupid and hard to understand. And I will just be posting myself in the video from now on. Like, any thoughts that I have post-recording, I'm just going to put them in editing instead of doing text. Because I know some people just listen to these videos as audio. Year's End will get both a plot and characterization bump of a point each. Burned will receive a characterization bump of 2 points to a 4. It's a low 4, though. Also, there's an error I must rectify.
Thanks, but I'm already burned.
Roll credits. The only episode that will be losing a point is Vertigo, which will have its visuals score dropped from a 4 to a 3. I still agree with everything I said in that video, plus I think the stairway fight is really cool, but I don't think it justifies a score higher than a 3. Also, to justify my important score of 4, this is an important episode for introducing Vertigo as a character and a substance, but Vertigo isn't necessarily important to this season specifically. It's an important recurring element of the series, but not so much season 1. There's a kill I missed in Betrayal where Oliver shoots someone off-screen that we see shooting at him earlier in the same fight. And this episode will also be receiving a slight characterization promotion to a 2. I think myself and a lot of other people missed the point of McKenna Hall. I specifically call her out as a perfect, fun, goody-two-shoes character, and that is exactly the point. Even her having a history with Oliver that we never see relates to the reason that she was introduced. The point of McKenna Hall is to make Oliver happy, and then rip that happiness away from him to drive him further into the vigilante persona. This is an important pattern for Oliver that even follows him into Season 3.
You have failed this city! You have failed this city! You have failed this city!
You could have just said he was nuts.
You have failed this city!
But then we get to my hottest take looking back on it. My rating of Home Invasion. I still agree with most of what I said with how this episode feels very contrived. But I did make a mistake worthy of bumping up this episode's score. My mistake was once again my interpretation of Oliver chasing after Laurel. And because of that, I said this.
I mean, trust me, I get that you miss having that kind of trusting but also kind of fun relationship, but Laurel is clearly not into you, so you should find someone else.
But I get it now, so I'm gonna correct my mistake from before. The Undertaking will not have its score changed, but it will get an addition to a counter. Remember this guy whose head Oliver slams into a wall? Yeah, I was stupid to not include him on the kill counter in the original video, so I'm gonna rectify yet another error of mine. Also, I should have added a point to the identity reveal counter in Darkness on the Edge of Town when Malcolm said this.
Last Christmas, I almost killed you.
Notice how he says, I almost killed you, not even hiding the fact that he was the Dark Archer anymore. And lastly, Sacrifice will get its plot score bumped up to a 4. And with every episode being given the necessary score bumps, let's take a look at the updated seasonal charts. The plot score only improves slightly from a 2.9 to a 3. However, the fact it improved at all shows that my methodology was wrong on my first go-around, and considering how amazing the seasonal arc was with The Undertaking, it probably should have been even higher. Characterization gets the biggest bump, putting it almost on the level of Season 2 in terms of its massively inflated characterization score. However, a score of 4.2 is absolutely justifiable for Arrow's first season. Visuals improves ever so slightly in ways that are barely worth covering. I repeat, there are no episodes in Season 1 that look outright bad, just consistently average. Despite there being some modification to the important score numbers, the seasonal average does not change. Entertainment score does slightly increase, but the modification is basically non-existent, and this category is fairly subjective anyway. Oliver killed 4 more people than I had initially counted, and there was an identity reveal that I missed as well. Despite adding a 52 through the room Lawton stays in, the number stays the same because Oliver's kill count no longer matches up with that number. Shame too, because that would have honestly been really cool, but also really dumb at the same time. I hate how much the CW abuses the number 52.
And with that, we are done. Holy shit, we are done. I don't have to talk about Season 1 anymore. I can finally move on to talking about Season 3, which I'm so excited for. I'm really excited for you guys to see my Season 3 premiere video. I had a lot of fun recording it. It was just a great video. I'm really excited for you guys to see it, and you guys will be able to see it next week. I promise. There's not going to be a 3-month hiatus this time, and I apologize for that. It's next week. Next week is the Arrow Season 3 premiere video, I promise.